good to see you all. Everybody ought to know a number of things about treating obesity, because there are over 30 million overweight people in the United Kingdom, and this number is continuing to grow because we continue trying to solve the problem by following ideas I've learned are not always valid. By correcting a few outmoded ideas now, we can have a major impact on obesity and, even more importantly, its comorbid medical consequences. Real and substantial weight loss, far beyond the standard 7 pounds in 7 days, was achieved by me and hundreds of thousands of others. Please imagine what this could do for the health of the population and the health of the National Health Service. A phenomenal amount of money is being spent unnecessarily. We can get control of this public health problem. It doesn't cost a great deal of money, and it's extremely successful now in over 2,000 pharmacies in the UK and Ireland. I'm Dr. Kreitzman, and I had a personal problem with weight. In 2003, I weighed over 26 stone. That calculated to a BMI of 54. This is the category of super morbid obesity, and the words have meaning. It was especially complicated for me. I held a PhD in nutritional biochemistry and metabolism from a very prestigious university, and I was a UK registered nutritionist. I was widely published in the nutrition and medical literature, and was here in England as a senior research associate at Cambridge University in the Department of Medicine at Addenbrooke's Hospital, and I was very fat. During my dealing with the weight issue, both on a personal level and as a research scientist, I learned quite a bit about the subject of overweight and obesity, and some of the things I now know may be helpful to you. I learned that some of the ideas most of us shared about weight loss were not always correct. Recognizing these and acting what I learned allowed me to lose a considerable amount of weight, and also to help many thousands of other people succeed with their weight loss as well. Obesity is one of the most destructive public health conditions in the world today. It doesn't need to continue to be. If losing 7 pounds on the scales would solve the weight problem, there'd be no public health issue. There seems to be a consensus. There's a reason for this. There's practically no fat loss in that initial pounds of weight loss. But the Connolly diet, lose 7 pounds in 7 days. Virgin diet, 7 pounds in just 7 days. Jennifer Aniston, 7 pounds in 7 days revealed. Juice Master diet, and on and on and on and on. Even exercise, the insane 12-minute workouts, lose 7 pounds in week 1. And of course the implication is that with any of these programs we should lose a stone every 2 weeks. In reality, the typical experience is quite different. Week 1 is wonderful. You lose about 7 pounds of weight, fine. But, and I'm afraid my butt looks big here. The weight loss is primarily glycogen and release-bound water. Glycogen is storage glucose. It's stored in the liver, it's stored in the muscles, stored in the fat cells. The average person stores about a pound, which is about 450 grams, but fat people can store quite a bit more. And at 4 calories for every gram for a carbohydrate, that calculates to about 1,800 calories. And if you use that 1,800 calories, you release about 4 pounds of its bound water. So you get about 5 pounds of weight loss with a calorie gap of only 1,800 calories. So everyone can lose about 7 pounds easily through diet or exercise. Week 2 is sometimes okay as well. You possibly lose another pound or 2 of remaining stored carbohydrates. But then week 3 comes along, and that can be awful because you're now using stored fat as fuel. And fat is not stored with water. And every pound of fat is worth 3,500 calories. So with the same approach, we sometimes lose no more or even gain. And this causes frustration and guilt because we know the diet works. See, weeks 1 and 2. So it must be you. And now we need a calorie gap of 17,500 calories to lose the same 5 pounds of weight. And that's much more difficult. And many people by week 4 give up. Weight loss depends on the calorie gap, which is the difference between the intake of calories and the expenditure. So how long does it actually take to lose weight? Well, come with me on a theoretical weight loss situation. At 3,500 calories to burn a single pound of fat, what happens if I eat 1,999 calories and burn 2,000 a day? Well, obviously, it'll take 3,500 days, which is about 10 years. Now, I can reduce that time in half by just increasing it to 2 calories a day. I hope you can see that the larger the gap, the more realistic becomes the rate of weight loss. The calorie gap needs to be as large as possible. Now, it's easy to calculate how long it will take at different calorie levels of intake to lose a stone of fat. And if you're looking at about 600 some odd calories, it can take you a couple of months. But as you increase the amount of calories per day, the time starts to be measured in years, not months, and eventually becomes almost infinite. Now, we all talk about calorie counting, but that can be very unreliable. The calories in the charts are the averages of many samples, because individual foods can vary widely in their composition. The individual foods were once living plants and animals, and they differ from each other the way you and I differ from each other. Now, Jackie Storti at the University of Study did an absolutely fantastic piece of work. She had dietitians plan a group of diets at different calorie levels. And then she had her graduate students go out and purchase the foods, prepare them, and then analyze them under laboratory conditions. And you can see the results of what they found. Some of the diets actually were pretty close to what they were intended to be, but not all. And if you were thinking you're on a 1,000-calorie diet and actually eating more than 1,600 calories a day, you wouldn't really succeed very well. It could take you an awfully long time to lose any weight. We're not actually living on our daily intake of calories. Our body stores calories. They're stored so we can use them when we need them. A fat person has many calories in storage. There's only one need for any external calories because some of our essential nutrients, such as amino acids and essential fatty acids, could provide calories. A person using 2,000 calories a day will use them whether they're eating or not, as long as there are calories in storage. If they use more calories, the body stores provide these as well. Diets below 1,200 calories were often thought of as unhealthy, requiring a small calorie gap. We'll discuss weight maintenance later. There used to be a prevalent idea that weight loss had to be slow because reducing intake below 1,200 calories a day was dangerous. This, of course, wasn't likely, since each excess stone of weight stored over 35,000 fat calories, which are readily available. So why did the concept prevail for so long? The insistence on a small calorie gap has made weight control extremely difficult and is no longer really necessary. The problem is that there is absolutely no combination of unsupplemented normal foods with a total calorie intake lower than 1,200 calories that can provide all of our essential nutrients in the amounts required for us to thrive. This isn't a safety limit for calorie intake. It's only a limitation dictated by the nutrient density of normal unsupplemented foods. So a prolonged ordinary food diet below 1,200 calories is unhealthy and can lead to nutritional deficiency. Suppose you saw this on a label. It has some amino acids, which are good for us. It has some fatty acids, which are good for us. It has some vitamins. It has a lot of E numbers. It's got 12% sugar. Coke is 11. It's got some colors. It's got some flavors. Some of those chemicals are frightening indeed. Would you eat it? Yes, of course you'd eat it. All of our natural foods are combinations of some of the things that we need for our diet, some of the things that are essential for the individual food, and some things that we either don't need or are actually harmful to us in everything we call food. We need to get a variety of nutrients to meet our health needs. It's the nutrients we need, not any specific foods. What is actually required in weight loss is the most nutritious food possible, with all of our required nutrients, without any of the unnecessary or even harmful stuff. And remember, normal foods contain anti-nutrients and some toxic chemicals. Look at the composition of a soybean, if you like. A low-fat, nutrient-complete enteral food formula would be very beneficial. That's calorie adjusted to provide for the maximum safe rate of weight loss. And that's really what we've provided in the Lipotrim program, which is a weight management program managed entirely by healthcare professionals based upon a total food replacement as a enteral feed. Now, the reason it's managed by healthcare professionals is that it causes real weight loss. And real weight loss is not benign. If you got a person with a disease like diabetes, the blood sugar in a program like this will normalize within a couple of days. And if they're taking medication, you can get the patient in trouble. There are some medications like warfarin or lithium where there's a very narrow safety spectrum. And dieting, when there's real weight loss, can change the absorption rate. And so this needs to be monitored. There are some people who shouldn't be dieting at all. Pregnant women, people who just recently had an operation, someone who's had recently a stroke or a heart attack. When you have real weight loss, it needs to be managed by people who know what they're talking about medically. Now, a commonly proposed solution to obesity, I'm sure you've heard it, I'm sure you've said it, just eat less and exercise more. So why then are there still more than 30 million of us so fat in the UK alone? Could it be we don't know this? Of course we know this. Could it be we have no willpower? That's silly. Our soft drink container is too large? Come on. I used to accept some of these ideas. Some of you probably still do as well. Whether you walk or run, exercise, you burn about an extra 100 calories a mile. While it's very important to exercise, it doesn't use up a lot of calories. It was a shock for me to learn that running a mile only uses an extra 100 calories. I'm sure it's going to be a shock to a lot of people who are running around spending a lot of time in gyms. But it takes a deficit of 3,500 calories to lose an extra pound of fat. Running 35 miles is not ordinarily possible. It certainly wasn't for me. But unfortunately, just eat less continues to be the state of the art. So what is it that interferes with our commitment to stick to a diet? Well, it is very easy to distract us from our resolve to stay on a diet. And the reason for this is a manifestation of our extremely powerful hunger drive. The desire to get food when it's restricted is one of our most powerful biological instincts. If it wasn't, we would never have survived more primitive times. Think about it. It was time for our ancestors to go shopping for dinner. This wasn't an option. We're living now at a time when we have the easy access to the largest supply and highest quality of foods in the history of the world. If we didn't inherit a very powerful hunger drive, we wouldn't have survived as a species. And unfortunately, we still have that drive. So what can we do about it? Not a heck of a lot, unfortunately. But there is one thing that will help, and that is ketosis. And there has been now some recognition that ketones do blunt the hunger drive, and a lot of people take this to heart. But it also provides energy for tissues like the brain, ketones do, which eliminate the need to create glucose from amino acids and spare protein. And please relax, ketosis is not ketoacidosis. Let's talk a little elementary biochemistry. Ketones are produced after metabolizing fat with triglycerides. When you use fat for energy, you release glycerol, which is a carbohydrate, which provides some sugar necessary to keep the blood levels of sugar normal, and also free fatty acids. Well, free fatty acids in excess can cause arrhythmias. So when fatty acids are further metabolized, they form ketones, which provide much of the required energy for tissues such as brain, and are also said to be the preferred fuel for muscles, including heart muscle. So dieting without ketosis is really not a good idea. But there's a threshold for ketosis, and it's about 50 grams for the average of carbohydrate. More than that, and most people will not be in ketosis. Well, when you take a formula like the Lipotrim formulas, they have about 45 grams. So there isn't a lot of room for the additional amount of anything, even if it's vegetables. With absolute strict compliance, there'll be minimal hunger for the vast majority of dieters, which is why the approach can be so successful. In my research role as Senior Research Associate at Cambridge, my team researched and published a number of studies treating overweight and obesity, including my own. The results we obtained with nutrient-complete, very low-calorie diets were so positive that we needed to make the approach available to UK doctors and hospital consultants. And after 13 years, many of the participating doctors argued that we should extend the program to pharmacists who were their healthcare colleagues, but were also ideally placed to offer easier availability and, even more importantly, follow-on weight maintenance assistance, which was not ordinarily possible in a busy medical practice. And now, 16 years later, they've been proved right. Pharmacists can also offer help to those overweight but not yet obese people who are not yet medical victims of their excess weight. Treating the not yet obese in pharmacies is really obesity prevention on the high street. Nobody got to be BMI 30 without going through BMI 27. And the pharmacists are doing very, very well at treating this group of people. In 4 audits that I've chosen here, Murray Pharmacies have treated 39 such people. The group run by Brendan Feeney has 1,884. Gareth Evans' group, 80 patients in this category. Finn McCall's 154. This is a major contribution on the high street for the people who are not even yet obese. And this is the typical weight loss profile you get from a compliant patient. Serious, effective weight loss in a linear pattern. You're all familiar with the BMI versus mortality risk graph. You really need to take this seriously. These categories are meaningful. BMI 20 to 25, the green area, is considered normal. Below that is considered risky. Between 25 and 30 is the overweight category, the not yet obese. 30 to 35 is obese, 35 to 40 is super obese, above 40 is morbid obese. There are things you need to know and respect about BMI. BMI was not determined by academics in an ivory tower. BMI was determined by insurance companies who didn't much fancy paying out their life insurance policies prematurely. So they put their statisticians to work on millions and millions of actuarial reports. And what they came up with was the idea that too much weight for your height was a problem and put their money at risk. BMI is simply weight in kilograms divided by the height in meters squared. If you can't calculate that, our website, lipotrim.co.uk, has a very easy-to-use BMI calculator, which will accept both imperial and metric entries. You're welcome to go use it. Now, even overall, well, we showed that overall mortality risk was sensitive with BMI. Individual disease entities are also sensitive. The big, very steep graph, of course, is type 2 diabetes. But it also affects gallbladder disease, high blood pressure, coronary heart disease. And I want you to take notice of the fact that the scale on this body mass index is between 21 and 30. None of these people were obese, despite the fact that this risk was quite substantial. If you extend the graph, this is for type 2 diabetes, beyond BMI 30, the rise becomes very, very frightening. Now, it was also interesting to learn that different ethnic populations suffer differently at different levels from the relationship within BMI and the incidence, in this case, of diabetes. If you take the point where the white population becomes obese, BMI 30, the South Asians reach that same point at BMI 24. Chinese at 25. Blacks at 26. There are these different in this multicultural society that we are living in now. We have people in all different ethnic groups, and these kinds of differentiation can be very important. So much so that people are starting to argue that maybe we should lower the threshold for calling it obesity. The biggest problem with that, of course, is that how many more millions of people would then be considered obese. But even NICE has started to recognize that at least for the South Asians, because of their sensitivity to diabetes, we should be at least warning these people that they are at risk at lower BMIs. And again, for BMI, cardiovascular disease, the shape of the graph is exactly the same. Now, one of the advantages of our program is that we can actually get audit data. Now, BMI, 5% is of the initial weight loss is the internationally recognized threshold for medical benefit from weight loss. Brendan Feeney's group, and Brendan is here at our stand at this meeting, his group treated 13,149 patients who lost more than 5% of their initial weight. Now, it's traditional when you have somebody who's lost weight to have them stand there with a pair of trousers that's too big and show how wonderful the weight loss was. Well, there's not enough room on this slide for 13,000 people holding their trousers out. But over 6,500 people lost more than 9% of their initial weight. 1,000 of them basically lost more than 20%. That's a lot of people. Now, even with the medical benefit, again from the Feeney audit, 1,253 patients, when they signed up for the program, indicated that they were taking medication for high blood pressure. Well, from other populations we've studied, we would expect that about 250 of those people would have stopped their medication for hypertension. With diabetes, we know more certainly how many, because we don't let people diet if they don't stop their diabetes medication. And the reason for that, I've already indicated, is that blood sugar normalizes within a couple of days. And if they continue with the medication, they can get into difficulty. And as far as we know, none of those people have gone back on their medication. But it's not just the lower weight people. The morbidly obese people are also being treated very effectively in pharmacy. Again, from the Brendan Feeney's audit, almost 2,000 people over BMI 40 lost more than 5% of their initial weight. Half of them, almost 1,000, lost over 10%. And I point out to you that the amount of 5% or 10% of the weight at BMI 40 is a heck of a lot more weight than the same percentage at BMI 25. These people lost a lot of weight. Weight losses in pharmacies providing the Lipotrim can be comparable to that achieved by bariatric surgery without the malabsorption of nutrients caused by the surgery or addiction transfer caused by the surgery. Again, in Feeney audit, 218 patients lost in excess of 30% of their initial weight. The average starting BMI was 42.4. After dieting, it dropped to 27.1, and half of them below 26.1. That's normal, folks. Weight loss by dieting doesn't have the same long-term problems as does weight loss by surgery. Addiction transfer is a serious problem associated with surgery. And if you do a Google search on addiction transfer, especially you'll see a lot of it in the States because there's a lot more surgery done in the States. It's not seen with a total food replacement program because people can actually stop the substance of abuse which you can't do with any other means of dieting. Unfortunately, a lot of the transfer, because what happens is that you lose the weight with surgery, no question. But the compulsion, the behavior isn't changed. And people turn to other things to satisfy their addictive behavior. And unfortunately, alcohol is a very common one. And health officials in this country now say they're starting to see an increase in the number of people fitted with gastric bands being referred for alcohol addiction treatment. Not sure I want that transfer. Now, I said we'd come back to talk about maintenance. The mantra has always been, if you lose it fast, you put it back fast. Well, that's very contrary to the data. This was a study done back in 2001 by the Anderson Group. It was long before we had any maintenance data. And these are the results of a meta-audit of 29 published maintenance studies. It's fascinating to see that very low-calorie dieters lost considerably more weight than the hypocaloric balanced dieters. But at 5 years, the VLCD dieters sustained a weight loss greater than the total initial loss in the hypocaloric group. Again, from the Feeney audit, 3,683 patients had weight maintenance records. The BMI at the end of the diet period was 30.7. After the last recorded visit was 30.2. That's maintenance in my mind. The average time interval was 243 days, with the longest time interval over 5 years. For half of the maintainers, the interval exceeded 3 months. Another audit, this one from pharmacist Gareth Evans, who's also with us here at this meeting. And as you can see, after dieting, the vast majority of people in his group, the units of BMI change after weight loss was between 0 and 1 BMI unit. The reason that we're being so successful with maintenance is that we do not expect maintenance to just happen. When people eat less, we still need to assure that they're well nourished. The just eat less concept doesn't tell you eat less of what. And it's very common for people who are restricting what they're eating, to come out with nutrient deficiencies. So what we did was we have these formulas for maintenance, and we put in the same nutrient mix that's in our strict diet, which people are living on for long periods of time. But also, we put in the best soluble fiber for slowing the absorption of glucose into the blood. And what this does is it lowers the glycemic index of the meal, which helps control the intake of calories. And this is particularly important after weight loss, because weight loss will correct insulin resistance. And that itself can lead to some difficulties in the immediate post-diet period. And the addition, fairly lately, of the caramel-flavored yogurt-covered bar has been a big help, because people really like them. Now, how much can we actually eat and maintain our weight? We know we have to balance the difference between intake and expenditure. And women have always been assumed to have about 2,000, they need about 2,000 calories, and men about 2,500. But is that true for each individual? Well, we can calculate that very easily from the data we obtain from this program, because we know exactly how much people are eating. And the compliant patient will lose weight in essentially a straight line. And you can calculate the slope of a straight line, which is simply the change in the height divided by the change in the horizontal distance. And if the slope goes down, of course, it's a negative slope. So if somebody loses 2 pounds a week at 3,500 calories a pound, we know that the dieter used from his stores 7,000 calories per week. Very simple. And we know for that individual what that person's body is required. So when you actually do the statistics, look at the median values for the actual calorie usage in a large number of people, you can see that the medians are not too far from what the population averages are expected to be. But about half the population could have actually eaten more. And unfortunately, the other half would not maintain on this level of, on the requested calorie copy, sorry for that, that we normally would tell the people to use. Now, you can't open a newspaper today or a medical magazine without seeing something put in by the surgeons about how weight loss surgery puts diabetes into remission. They should emphasize, of course, that it's weight loss that puts diabetes into remission, and that's been known for about 30 years. Even Diabetes UK knows this, And they know that resolution or remission of type 2 diabetes is possible. And it can be done either through dietary and fitness measures or even, and they admit, through gastric bypass surgery. So why did they give a £2 million grant to study crash diet cure for diabetes, which is you've seen throughout the press in the last weeks? It at least made one diabetologist very unhappy, because they wrote in that they were extremely surprised that the report didn't mention their work, some of which was published in the same journal on reversal of diabetes with VLCD. And Paisley has published that same study in other data in other places like Diabetes Medicine back in 1998 using Lipotrim. Now the thing about Richard Paisley, consultant Paisley, is that he got involved with this approach because one of the patent medical practices was treating one of Paisley's diabetics who was scheduled for a foot amputation. And when he lost the weight, didn't need the operation. And a second patient needed a cardiac bypass, and the hospital wouldn't do it. And the doctors had told him he had about 6 months. Well, when he lost the weight, the hospital did do the operation, and I cherish in my files a letter from this patient, which was sent when he got his driver's license renewed. So that's how Paisley got involved, and it's wonderful that you can really do help people. But even the general public realizes that 4.2 million for this is a little strange. It's not news. What's next? I love that tagline. What's next? Studies to prove that penicillin works as an antibiotic. I'm going to leave you with what I feel is an important concept. The National Institute for Drug Abuse in the United States at the National Institute of Health, Nora Volkow is the director. Speaking on obesity possibility as an addiction, Dr. Volkow said, addiction is characterized by loss of control in relation to a substance or behavior. Now, I lose control over certain foods all the time. However, I'm not obese. You could say I have a vulnerability to rewarding effects of certain foods, but is it severe enough to be called a disease? Probably not. I would say that in extreme cases of obesity in which patients want to stop eating, but they just can't, even with awareness of all the adverse physical and psychological consequences, because obese people are stigmatized, which is a powerful social stressor, then yes, I would say there's an addictive dimension to their behavior. New science is showing that overeating is not a behavioral disorder, such as a lack of self-control, and is not caused by a hormonal imbalance. Instead, foods rich in fat and sugar can supercharge the brain's reward system, which can overpower the brain's ability to tell an individual to stop eating. In these cases, the more someone eats, the more he or she wants. And again, from Dr. Volkow, there actually appear to be a limited number of behaviors which can result in addiction, much like drugs. There are only a few chemical compounds that can produce addiction. You can't become addicted to antibiotics. Only chemical compounds that increase dopamine activity in reward pathways can produce addiction. And similarly, only behaviors that increase dopamine in the nucleus accumbens, for example, gambling, can result in addiction with repeated exposures in those that are vulnerable. The same is true with food. There's a lot of interest now in the nucleus accumbens. I'm sure you're going to be reading about it quite a bit, because it seems to have an important role in pleasure and laughter and reward and reinforcement learning, as well as fear, aggression, impulsivity, the placebo effect, and of course addiction. But whether you call it compulsive eating or addiction, it benefits many such people to actually stop the substance they're abusing, in this case excessive eating. But unlike stopping alcohol, tobacco, or drugs, we need to eat to provide the nutrients to stay healthy. Total food replacement allows people to stop the substances they're abusing for prolonged periods while still staying completely nourished. That's why Lipotrim works with so many obese people. So in summary, managing weight, to get weight loss in a reasonable time, you need to maximize the calorie gap. It helps to promote ketosis, to blunt the hunger and also to provide some other medical benefits. It's absolutely essential to provide all the nutrients to keep the dieter healthy while they're losing weight. It's not a bad idea to stop the substance of abuse for as long as possible. This will help while a person is losing weight. But more importantly, it will help with maintenance later on. And please remember that maintenance is what failed initially. We've got to take maintenance seriously. It doesn't just happen. We need to stop blaming people for their method of dieting or the people themselves when they struggle with weight maintenance. It's tough. And of course, we don't claim that lunch failed when we get hungry again at tea time. The diet didn't fail. I've talked about the Lipotrim pharmacy service for a number of reasons. Not because I'm expecting you to go out and purchase Lipotrim. The program is no more commercial than any of the pharmaceutical treatments. There are hundreds of very low-calorie diet programs worldwide, and each varies somewhat with their program, and unfortunately, their understanding of the physiology involved, much as traditional diets vary and with obvious different outcomes. The Lipotrim program is exclusively available to and monitored by over 2,000 healthcare professionals. It requires and actually insists upon strict compliance. We take people off if they don't comply, due to physiological necessities and not convenience or popular conventions. It has a research-based maintenance program. And most importantly, we can document the weight management and medical outcomes. And you can see some of those results at our stand. Audit results from the Feeney Group are one example. This is an evidence-based program. Another pharmacy audit, this one from Finn McCall at the Prestwich Pharmacy. This graph is a representation of the individual patients, the amount of the percentage of initial weight that they lost. It's quite an impressive achievement by a single pharmacy. The picture is that of a flat earth. Everybody needs to abandon outmoded ideas so that we can help more of the 30 million overweight people in the UK. We're now really succeeding at getting substantial weight loss and maintenance, and you can as well. We can manage overweight while keeping dieters well nourished. We've seen why calorie counting can be uncertain, which might make standard diets unreliable. We've discussed why diets under 1,200 calories are not necessarily unhealthy. We've provided audited proof of large weight losses in pharmacy-monitored programs and the medical implications of the weight loss. We've indicated that some people may be actually addicted to food and the implications for treatment of such people. And most importantly, we've emphasized that rapid weight loss can lead to rapid remission of type 2 diabetes. If for no other reason, it's worth taking some of these concepts to heart. I thought you might want to know some of what I learned. I hope it will enable you to help reduce the plight of overweight and obese people. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you.